My name is Marla Kunin, and I'm the Executive Dean for Strategy and Stakeholder Management here at Vinci. And it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to this Curiosita at the end of September, getting very close to the end of the year. And we've got a wonderful lineup today. So first of all, we start with a little bit of an icebreaker debate. We always like to debate things, but I want to keep this quite short and make sure we don't go over the 15 minutes. So that we can really enjoy our times with our students. Guest speaker, which is Mrs. Jacqueline van Zyl, who's going to speak to us on the Upliftment to the Working Poor in South Africa, where she's introducing a competency framework, which I think is really exciting. And then one of my favorite speakers, which is he's also the chair of our convocation, and that is Dr. Gianni Mariano. So very exciting. He's going to be speaking to us on revisiting personal development and career growth in a post-pandemic reality. So really exciting lineups today. But as always, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sort of icebreaker debate. And the thing that I think for me that I've been looking at quite extensively at the moment, and Prof. Klop and I have been speaking about, as well as Dr. Katsamba, is around innovation. And, I just got a question that we asked, and it was, what, new innovation strategies, what new innovations in general do we think could fast track the world of leadership in South Africa and maybe fast track our economic growth, and to basically say, as a South African economy, what type of innovations do we need, or in what areas do we need innovation in order to see that? I think myself personally, and I don't want to speak too long so I can give other people a chance as well, is I've been fascinated by the whole growth in terms of technology. And I think the lack of ability of people to often understand that organizations invest massive amounts in terms of technology, but then they land up not really being able to implement the technology because they don't have the buy-in. So from a fifth industrial revolution perspective, it's that lack of a dance between the humanity and between technology. So for me, I do believe that the innovations we need are through technological advancements, but it comes with quite a complexity if we actually want to fast track our economy. And MTN released a report yesterday in which they spoke about the fact that we are going to be sitting in a situation where the bandwidth is really going to be struggling because I'm just looking for the article. They want to pull back on the bandwidth from November. And I think that is going to have a massive, massive impact for us. So I'd like to open the floor and anyone can comment. I'm just scrolling through to just get that article, and I will post the link. But on what innovations we think we need to fast track our economy. Hi, Janet. I hope you've got some opinion on this.
On that, I think one of the areas that we need to really be focusing on is developing township economies. And figuring out how we actually support and enable the development of township and rural economies, actually. So traditional business, I think, will muddle along and keep doing what it's doing, and it does also need, but I think they're very aware. But how do we actually boost what's happening in our less economically productive areas?
And I certainly think, Prof. Klop, I don't know if you have an opinion on this. I definitely think that what's happened in a lot of those spaces is that it's also focused very much on entrepreneurship. And for me, from a leadership perspective, that makes us that we need to ensure as business leaders that we're empowering people to have the economic understanding and the business acumen in order for them to actualize some of these entrepreneurial ideas. So I think innovation is maybe something we don't have short, but what is short is the ability to upskill, cross-skill, etc. people. Prof. Klop, I don't know if you've got any views on this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Marla. And, reflecting about this thing for many times, I get the sense in many ways we also guilty because we try and do it ourselves. So we must actually just create the space and open up the opportunity and allow the people to come with the creative solutions. So quite often we will look at government, we look at leaders and say, what can you do for me? We just say, there's an opportunity, and then almost from the bottom up, let the communities take charge, let the people come with ideas. We must basically just create the open space for them to really unlock that value?
So I see Prof. Singh's got his hand up.
Thank you, Marla. Yes, I like what I'm hearing. So one of the areas that we certainly need innovation, and currently I think it's a very topical issue, but the capacity at municipal level, in municipalities, it is very clear that there is no capacity at that level. Whereas when you go to provincial or national level, you would find that in government, they have capacitated national and ignored, if I can say, the municipal level. So how do we innovate and bring in appropriately skilled and competent leaders at municipal level?
I think you've also touched on something quite important, Prof. Singh, and that is around the fact that people think that innovation has to be a new product or a new thing, but it can actually be new processes, new systems, and I think that that's really important to remember. I think also for me, why that rings true for your comment, I don't know if you guys saw in the newspaper yesterday, they spoke about the assassination of the witness in the finance department. I'm sure you're all aware of the case. And one of the accused is actually a municipal worker in the KZN municipality. And he's been paid, he hasn't been at work since March. And even in a leave of absence, he's been paid his salary and whilst in jail. And I think for me, I'm not speaking about that case or politicizing it. What I'm speaking about is that is a definite flaw in the processes or the systems. So for me, innovation in municipalities would look great in terms of more innovation in processes and systems and less in the invention, so to speak, of new things. So I'm not sure if there's anyone from government here that would like to comment regarding that or any thoughts that they maybe have in the audience. And then Prof. Klopper has also put the post that I spoke about, because I did send it to him as well, around MTN's article about the digital load shedding that we've got coming our way. Potentially, and the massive impact that this is going to have on business if it is actualized. It's in the chat column, so you're welcome to get the link and see that. So everyone's a bit quiet now, but I think that this has been a nice start to the debate. So the purpose of this is really just a 10-minute icebreaker. It's not to solve the world's problems or to give us a solution, but just to get our sort of brains and collective minds thinking, and to engage on something. So I think the things I've heard a lot about is that innovation needs to permeate multiple areas within society, not just businesses innovating. It also has to not only be about products, but it also has to actually be about the innovation of systems, the innovation of ideas, the innovation of strategy, etc. And for me, one of the things I would like to see in innovation is the innovation of the concept or the construct of strategy. I think that too long we've made it this goal-orientated approach, and I would like to see far more agile strategy and the ability of organizations to be able to really understand that strategy has to be fluid and it can no longer be this overarching goal-orientated umbrella. And the conundrum that we sit with is, how do you then ensure productivity and ensure output when you want to have this type of a strategy? Janet, I know this is an area you're actually an expert in. And so these are just things I wanted to kind of throw out there and to think about. But today we get to the stars of our show, who you've actually come here to listen to. And it is always my pleasure to be able to introduce. So we start off with our student speaker, hi Jacqueline, which is Mrs. Jacqueline van Zyl. Her topic for her thesis is on the upliftment of the working poor in South Africa, a competency framework. I would like to remind the audience that, before I introduce Jackie, is that the purpose of having a student here and a PhD student or a doctoral student is that they're at the earliest stages of their studies, or they are starting with their methodological aspects, and they want us to be able to give them input. So please feel free to post in the chat column, raise your hand. We'll give Jackie the opportunity to speak to her points, and then we'd really like the engagement, questions to her, challenges to her, etc. So what I love about our Da Vinci students is that they're all business leaders in their own right. And Jackie is certainly no different. She's the general manager responsible for business transformation and optimization as well. So very much innovative there, Jackie, at Impact Group. And this is an entity within the Tebe Investment Corporation portfolio. And it's one of our mega employers and a leading supplier of contract catering, cleaning, hygiene, etc., facilities management, and the list goes on. And I think Jackie, although she's been with Impact for 7 years, she has spent 25 years in the consulting, skills development, and financial services sector. And I think that this is why she's able to really embrace and look at the upliftment of the working poor in South Africa and look towards a competency framework. I think we can all agree, Jackie, that what you are studying is something so critical. We've spoken now, I mean, Janet raised about township entrepreneurship, rural entrepreneurship, and we have to begin with our own corporate social investment, and our own community social investment, which is about empowering and upskilling people. So I, for one, am looking very forward to your discussion. And I think what's amazing for me is your interest in legislative drivers for transformation and the catalytic impact that this has on strategy and business improvement, which I spoke to, because I think when you work from the bottom up, you really do empower across the organization. And I think for me, the fact that you're so focused on the plight of so many of your African sister colleagues and what has happened in terms of their own environments, as well as the working poverty cycle that continues to perpetuate amongst all of us. And I think that those of us that are in a position of privilege should certainly be working towards sustainable solutions and sustainable problem probing. So I really do honor the topic that you're presenting, and I wish you the best of luck in presenting to us today. And ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mrs. Jackie van Zyl. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marla, and thank you very much to everyone attending and for the feedback and guidance that hopefully you guys will be giving to me. So as Dr. Marla has said, my thesis, the title of my thesis is The Upliftment of the Working Poor, very specifically in the contract cleaning industry in South Africa, and the intent is to create a competency framework as a result of the research. So as Dr. Marla introduced me, my title is the General Manager for Transformation and Business Optimization. And those of you that are familiar with bifocal glasses, I sometimes feel that that's what I'm wearing. I have to, for the transformation part of my role, I have to be able to gaze into the future to see what we could be potentially looking at in a future transformed business environment, and transformation in its broadest sense, not just looking at race and gender and ability. But then also, with the bifocals, you have that little bit at the bottom where you then look down and you look at the reality of the now, what is happening now, and what is within this reality that we need to address today in order to achieve the future that we are looking towards. So the research environment is the contract cleaning in industry, and specifically my employer, and most of the within this environment, it's highly regulated and legislated in terms of the wage that the cleaners would be earning. So although the minimum wage, the national minimum wage, and the wage that a contract cleaner would earn is different, our cleaners earn more than the minimum wage, it is still considered a low salary. As a result, many of our cleaners, even though they are employed, so they are earning an income on a monthly basis, they still don't have enough money to make ends meet. One of the reasons for this contributing factor is the size of the household that they have to look after with that particular salary. Often it's a single salary house as well. So paid employment has generally been regarded as a primary means to avoid poverty. But there are indications, though, that the factors like low income, irregular employment, inadequate wages actually is leading to an increase in the working poor population in our country, but also worldwide. In fact, approximately 8% of the employed people in the world live in extreme poverty. So they do have a job, but they still don't have enough money to make ends meet. So there's another challenge when you are living in poverty, even if it is working poverty, is that it's very difficult to get out of that. Once you are in, it tends to become a generational thing where the kids, the children of the working poor or the poor population end up being poor themselves and being stuck in this cycle of poverty. And the only way, and this has been proven through studies, the only way to get out of this cycle is, in fact, with an external influence. It's only an external influence that will help the working poor to escape that cycle. But let me first tell you about one of the ladies that I have interviewed within my environment. She's also a cleaner, but when she's not at work, she's actually the conductor of the church choir. She assists with Sunday lunch at the church. That's now to feed the whole congregation. She's a mentor for young and single mothers. She looks after her own family as well as her extended family with a salary of 3,800 Rand. And she doesn't have matric. She had to leave school when she was in grade 11 to look after her sick mother and her siblings. She's not a cleaner, I would imagine, because it's all she can do. Definitely not. She's also not too lazy. If I listen to what she's busy with in her life beyond work, she's definitely also not a lazy person. And I was wondering or curious about the fact that why do we have such competent people working as cleaners within the industry, within our environment, that we are not seeing. We are not seeing what they are able to do. We kind of see the uniform coming into the office to take the bin and clean and go out. Perhaps we give a wave or a nod of the head, but we're not really seeing who's walking into the office and the potential that we have in such a person. So just imagine for a moment, in our company alone, we have approximately 15,000 cleaners. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the job of with being a cleaner. I think it's a noble and really a commendable job, especially, I don't know if you've noticed, most of the time when you greet even the cleaner cleaning the facilities in the mall, she will always greet you with a smile. So there's definitely, I'm not saying that it's wrong or bad to be a cleaner. All I'm saying is that there's potential for some of the people within the cleaning industry, some of these women to actually, if we can just see them and we can tap into just this girl's leadership qualities, her ability to motivate, her project management skills, her budgeting skills, her ability to multitask. These are things that generally we are prepared to pay a premium for when we employ managers. So what can we do to see her and to actually give voice to someone with such skill? So I did ask her the question. I did ask her, so what should we as an organization do? And her response was, please just help me to be seen. Please just help me to no longer be invisible. And that was quite an accusation to me personally as well. And you know, doing your doctoral studies, you think it's about everything in your head, but it's not. For me personally, this has profoundly changed I would almost want to say who I am as a person, because I was one of those people who tend to disregard, just, with a nod, the person coming in. So I'm really passionate about doing something to give a voice and to give opportunity to my African sisters working with me at Impact. So the preliminary literature review revealed that there's inadequate research currently regarding the working poor, specifically for African women in the contract cleaning industry. Moreover, there's a necessity for some empirical research on the intentional skills development for the working poor, the self-upliftment and poverty reduction amongst African females in the working poor population, and again narrowing it down to the cleaning services industry. So my research problem crystallized into elevated levels of unemployment and low levels of education skills required for most cleaning jobs, enable employers to recruit new employees effortlessly, thereby actively negating the need for skills development and impeding the ability of the working poor in this sector to gain access to higher skilled, better paying jobs required to break the poverty cycle. So that theoretical assumptions made during the preliminary literature review suggest that poor education traps people in the poverty cycle. And the fact that this area is so under-researched and neglected and almost invisible, the cleaning industry almost as invisible as the cleaners, was another factor that encouraged me to do this research. So the study aims to construct a competency framework for the upliftment of the working poor in the contract cleaning industry in South Africa. The main research question is, what competency framework can be constructed for the upliftment of the working poor in the contract cleaning industry in South Africa? The sub-questions to be answered: what are the learning and career aspirations of the working poor in the contract cleaning industry? Because I do not want to make the assumption that there are career aspirations or that there's not. So I want to confirm that. Then also, what are the actual lived conditions of the working poor in this industry? What concepts and constructs relate to the working poor in this industry in South Africa? Then what practical insights could be derived from the needs and upliftment of the working poor in this industry? And then what elements would be contained in the competency framework that will enable the upliftment of the working poor in this industry in South Africa? So the competency framework should provide a basic set of personal competencies over and above the technical skills required for a hygiene and cleaning operative. So when we recruit new cleaners, we take them into training, but we focus on using the single disc machine, the scrubber machine, or the color coding, or how to mix the chemicals. Those are the things that we focus on. So what are the other elements that should be included in the learning that would assist? So it is anticipated that these competencies will include the personal competencies like self-awareness, self-management competencies. My ontological perspective is constructivist, and my epistemology is that of interpretivist. I'm very curious about and interested in the specific and very contextualized environment of the cleaner. And they are closest to my heart, and I really would like to understand and interpret what's happening within that population, and how we can use focused or intentional skills development to address that. Together with my supervisor, Dr. Rika Viljoen, we've agreed that the methodology best suited is constructivist grounded theory. The chosen methods are semi-structured interviews and focus groups. I just want to interrupt myself here and just mention that in February, Prof. Harbier did a workshop on focus groups and interviews, and that was really, it gives great understanding and practical insights into the process. I would really advise anyone embarking on interviews and focus groups to have a look at that. Yeah, so I opted not to use surveys specifically. I had to consider my audience or the participants. They are not, I'm going to expect of them to complete a form, and I wanted to be closer to them. I did not want them to just, for them just to be on paper. So it would also not elicit the rich data that I'm interested in obtaining for this study. I have commenced with the fieldwork. We've done a pilot that happened prior to the individual interviews, and thereafter 2 focus groups. So I interviewed 22 cleaners. Now I know that, and I can agree, I can confirm that data saturation did happen before the 22nd participant. I just could not get it over my heart to tell people that I've made appointments with that I'm not going to listen to their story. So I did do all 22. After the interviews, I had a focus group first with a group of women who started their career as cleaners and then were promoted. The intent of that conversation had been to determine, so what was it, what skills did you have, what skills did you acquire, what mechanisms that you use, just to understand what happened for them to be taken out of that environment. Now, salary-wise, you're looking at a 3,800 salary going to up to 40,000 Rand salary. It's quite a jump, and it puts quite a distance between being a working poor when you start earning that salary. The second focus group was the managers responsible for the promotion and movement of the cleaners in the business. I wanted to understand from them exactly what it is that they are looking for. What makes a person stand out? What makes a cleaner get on a short list for promotion or for advancement in the business. So the credibility and rigor of the research process and the outcome will be confirmed by triangulating these different information sources, and then I'll be ratifying it through literature review. I think that is, during the process, during both the focus groups and the personal interviews, I made field notes and did memoing. I also recorded all the conversations, and I'm in the process now of transcribing those. So I'd really like to get your input and insight into where I am and any advice that you can give me going forward.
I see Prof. Singh does. Prof. Singh?
Thanks for that. I think it's a very valuable study, and I'm particularly interested because you're addressing the phenomena of poverty, and
yes.
It's in the sector that is involved in cleaning. So yes. I've heard you in terms of your methodology and where you are and your philosophical background as well. So the question I have for you, listening to your explanation that poverty is intergenerational, it's very difficult to break out of the cycle of poverty, and not just amongst cleaners, amongst all sectors, but your focus is cleaners. Yes. So these are mostly females that you're working with. So so African females. The question I have for you is, are you looking into what you call those other things, those other factors that have a bearing on the poverty and the difficulty of breaking out of the cycle of poverty. So, in other words, apart from those technical skills of vacuuming or sweeping or washing, etc., but those other skills, and here's specifically something that's so relevant in our African community, and that is the issue of black tax. So
Yes.
I want to hear if you're including this somewhere in your study.
Black tax came up in almost every single interview. It's really taking its toll in terms of the ability of, even though the person is earning a salary of 3,800 Rand a month, most of that money goes towards paying for expenses that's not really even of that household. And the one lady was telling me when it's payday, her mother's friend is knocking on her door asking for the Tupperware money because her mother bought Tupperware and now she's expected to pay for that. So yes, we are most definitely looking at black tax. It did come up, and thank you very much for highlighting that, Prof. Singh.
Thank you, Jackie.
Question I would like to direct to Jackie is launching on the issue of black tax. Has she considered looking at articles and journals on issues of dependency ratio comparatively in other parts of the country and South Africa? Maybe that can give us a picture as South Africans as to where we're standing regarding this issue of black tax. Is it an isolated case, or is it similar to other countries but in different magnitude? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gibson. I'll most definitely consider including that. Thank you very much.
So you haven't yet, because I think what Gibson's also speaking to is the fact, have you included it? Have you thought about it? Are you going to include it?
No, it just came out as a theme. And with the grounded theory, I'm starting with the literature review now after the field work.
Please feel free to unmute and ask your questions. I don't want to slow the process down.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask a question. I might have missed your opening statement where you said the research question that you're trying to answer. But just from an anecdotal experience, we have a few cleaners. So we invested in them, and they got while they were working, degrees, BCom, etc. But and I know a few private households that have done this, and when they finished with those degrees, and we were all so proud of the achievement, they still couldn't get work because they had never worked in an office environment, and there was no opportunity to get them internships. So even though they were educated, they were still trapped in the poverty cycle. So that's why I asked, what was the research question that you were answering? Thanks.
The research question is, what competency framework can be constructed for the upliftment of the working poor in the cleaning, contract cleaning industry in South Africa? So what I'm hearing, what you are saying is that it's not only the qualification that is necessary, but it's also the territorial competence that is necessary for the person to be able to climatize and to be pulled into a working environment and to actually succeed that. Thank you very much, Berenice, for that input. I'm making a note of including thoughts on that as well. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation that you have just made, and which actually touches on a very critical element or situation that we as a country or the South African society we are facing. I think part of the question that I wanted to ask, Berenice has actually covered part of it, because I wanted to check with you have you also considered the element of unemployed graduates or employed graduates, because you are focusing on the employed people, but who are working poor? Have you also considered those who are highly qualified, but unfortunately they haven't gotten the opportunity to prove themselves anywhere in terms of the qualifications that they possessed? Another issue that I wanted to check if you have also looked into the kind of environment that each working place, in the working place, that people can be provided with. I know that it's something that doesn't exist, but because you are into this research, because my belief is that anyone in the organization have an innovative capability. They can contribute innovative ideas into every levels or every spheres of the organizations. But unfortunately, the setup that is within our culture in the country is not that one that allows people like a cleaner, for instance, to make a contribution in the growth of the organization.
Thank you very much for that, Babungile. In terms of the highly qualified people, yes, we do have, there are instances where people have qualifications and are working as cleaners, but they're not part of my study. My study is specifically for those who have not yet achieved any qualification beyond basic schooling up to a level or grade 10. From grade 10, 11, that is where the focus is stopping. But a very, very important point that you've raised, and definitely something to consider in the future. In terms of the working environment, a valid point. I can only speak about our working environment, and our CEO is very passionate about reaching every single employee. That includes every single cleaner should know that they are there for a purpose and that they support the purpose of our organization. So yes, it's not part of my study, but as an organization, it's definitely, we see the value of every single employee in the business.
I think also Dr. Mkhize's question is it's important that you don't only focus on the organization that your study is on, but rather on across. And I think, Dr. Mkhize, that's also what you're speaking to, that it's actually a bit wider than just the organization that you're necessarily doing your study on.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mine is very short. I just wanted to congratulate Jackie. You've touched on a very important subject with great potential, really, for bringing a lot of people out of poverty. I've seen it in my line of work over the number of years. Once we start seeing, and I'm going to use the word them in brackets, once we start seeing them, we begin to bring out, to untap this great potential. I mean, I remember in one organization, we ended up having an SMME that ended up doing the cleaning. In another one, they became the receptionist. And so you're beginning to really move them from point A to point B, but it's all about seeing. But yes. One last comment, though, that I just needed to make. You talked about transformation. And once we start seeing them, there's that journey of transformation that happens. And transformational development, really, when we do it properly, it's a point where, yes, you transform the beneficiary, but you yourself, you get transformed in that journey. And I think you touched on that. I think that's brilliant. I hope you have a chapter on that. I'm going to read your thesis. Thank you.
Another issue where you might need to look into is the issue of RPL, recognition of prior learning for that sector. That sector is older than most sectors in the world, but I don't think much has been done in as far as making it a career, because if my memory serves me well, the sector involves there's a lot of facets involved in that sector, from organizing, from planning. It's very it's deep. It's a deep one, but we haven't had moved as far as RPLing those people. So yeah, we need to really look into that. So that in future, should they spend some time in that field, depending on their background, then it can be a fruitful career. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Gibson. Just in terms of you were mentioning the things that they have to learn. In the level 3, which is a supervisory qualification in cleaning and hygiene, trigonometry is one of the subjects, and that is for example, to calculate working at heights. What is the length of the ladder that you need in order to clean up to a certain story of a building, the windows of a building. So it's not, when I started in the cleaning industry, I thought, so how difficult can this be? Some sunlight liquid and some handy Andy will do the thing. It's not. It's really there's the chemicals and the whole. It's completely underrated, the industry in terms of just the complexity thereof and the value that it adds. But RPL is definitely something that we can consider to include. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Jackie, and for all the questions. So we've just got a few minutes. So I'm just going to ask mine, which is a bit of a maybe an awkward question, but people that know me know I just ask. So as a white South African who presumably comes from a more privileged position than those that you're interviewing, how have you managed to break the cross-cultural barriers? How have you managed to get people to trust you and engage with you? And how do you think, I know it's a triple barrel question, and how do you think that you can have a deep understanding of the position that they come from? Because when doing constructivist research and coming from this type of a perspective, you really have to be able to have a deep understanding if you really want to enrich your study.
I did nothing intentionally. I did not intentionally set out to break down barriers I just invited the ladies to come and have coffee with me on a Saturday, and the level of sharing, we spoke about our childhood. I shared a little bit about mine, and they shared a little bit about theirs, and we really, in the end, some of the things that they shared with me, I was astounded, and I'm trying to. It is a challenging question that you are asking. I did not think about the fact that I'm white when I went into the conversation. It's a huge oversight, but it just worked. The girls were they were so excited about somebody listening to their story, somebody caring and trying to, they would, in the conversation, they would say, okay, so what can I do with this? And how do I get onto a learnership? All those kind of things happened, and they just shared. They continue to share. Some of the people that were close to our office, they would.
Thanks, Jackie. You were breaking up a little bit, but I did hear it. Prof. Singer's asked you a question, if you don't mind, because I see your screen is blurring, which means it's breaking up. If you don't mind asking Prof. Singer's asked a question, if you don't mind answering it in the chat box. He's put a question in the chat box while we go on to our guest speaker. I really want to thank you. I think it is, as everyone has said, it's an amazing study. I think that it's going to really be groundbreaking. And so I just want to remind you that when we get to the oral defense part of doctoral theses, we often find that students forget to actually speak to what is so unique about their contribution, remembering that at doctoral level, you have to say, this is my unique contribution to the body of knowledge. And so I just want to remind you that when you're doing your competency framework, you're going to be challenged on the fact that there may be other competency frameworks, and just to really ground why yours is a unique contribution. So that's just my 2 cents worth from a supervisory kind of perspective. And you've got a really wonderful supervisor in Dr. Viljoen, so I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful journey continued on. And if anyone has questions for Jackie as we go on to our guest speaker, please feel free to pop it into the chat. And Jackie, if you don't mind just watching the chat box to answer questions, and well done on embarking on this study. Really fantastic.